Welcome to the Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uva, and today we're going to get some insight in lacrosse. And my guest today, her name is Amanda Fuchs, and she's the CEO of Interactwith. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me today.
Yeah, no problem. So, Amanda, I usually start my guests where they went to college. So where did you go to school?
So I went to the College of New Jersey,
Okay.
and I loved my experience there. And I'm from New Jersey, so I kind of kept it very Jersey and stayed in the state.
Great. So now let's go back into high school. When did you start looking at lacrosse as something that you wanted to go on to college with? Was it freshman year, sophomore year, senior year? When did it all start for you?
So I actually started playing lacrosse when I was in middle school, so around 8th grade. And then I played 3 sports throughout my high school career. And then I realized that I really had a passion for lacrosse more towards junior year. And that's when I also joined an elite team out in New York. So I had to travel an hour each way just to practice about once or twice every maybe month. And so that's when I really started focusing on, okay, this could be a college opportunity for me because I'm competing in an elite team. I'm going to tournaments with college coaches watching us. And so junior year was really a pivotal moment for me to really get dedicated.
Gotcha. So now, did you get recruited?
I did, and I had a few opportunities to look at a bunch of colleges and look at a few different places that recruited me. And what it boiled down to was really the type of school that I wanted to go to. Mm-hmm. That was my number one. Education is always first. Yeah. And then what my experience would be like as an athlete. And so I got recruited with it between D1 schools and then D3 schools. And then I narrowed it down to really D3.
Okay.
Because I liked the small school settings. But I wanted to be on a team where it was still competitive for me as well, where I continue my passion for lacrosse.
Right. So now, what was the process in high school for the people that are watching the show? What's the recruiting process for lacrosse? You know, what happens? Do coaches start calling you? Does letters start out first? You know, how does this all begin?
When I got recruited, it was, 2000, early 2000. So that's going to be a very different experience from what kids are doing now. Maybe in terms of more of the channels that the coaches would reach you. Now, of course, email is a huge communication. Maybe social media, they'll look at your stats and on the websites. But for me, it's going to be a little bit different. So for me, attending tournaments was a very huge, critical way for me to be able to stand out in front of my coaches. So that's one way. So I reached out to coaches and let them know, okay, I'm going to be at this tournament. I sent them a letter, actually mailed them, and I also sent a few emails, but telling them what my schedule was. And then from then, if they were interested, I would actually get a letter, not even an email. So I had to check my mail every day. And then that's when you would start going through that recruiting process, visiting the school, talking to the team, talking to the coaches.
And what were the coaches looking for? Good grades, good SATs? What are the coaches looking for lacrosse?
It was definitely a mixture of all these things. Just like if you were looking for a job, it wouldn't just be, well, do you fit this role? It would be, how would you play with our team? Are you going to be a good team player? Are you going to sync with the rest of the team? So when I visited schools, I first looked at the campus, and then I looked at what the schedule was like, and then I looked at the actual school. Is it going to have the degree that I wanted, which was business? And then when I met with the coach, they were really looking at, okay, we see that you have skills, but are your grades good? Mm-hmm. That's one thing, definitely. They always want to have scholar athletes, that's what they call them. And they also wanted us to meet with the teammates to make sure that once we get on the team, are we all going to get along? Are they someone I could play with, and am I someone they could play with as well?
Right. So now, what type of schools? You said Division I, II, and III. When you went to go visit these schools, what schools were we looking at? What were you looking at in schools? Were they like schools like Penn State, or just all small schools like College in New Jersey?
There were a few Pennsylvania schools that I was looking at. My top were Gettysburg and the College of New Jersey. I also got a letter from Cornell, but I knew instantly that I didn't want to go too far. It's all the way upstate New York, and I'm not really a cold weather person. And I've been to Cornell a bunch of times for lacrosse camps. So that's where I really narrowed it down to these two schools that were close and were good in size, and also had a very good academic program and had a good business school.
Okay, so now, how did you end up picking the school? Were your mom and dad involved? How did the whole process go on picking the school?
So my parents definitely had a huge influence on where they thought where I would fit in. But at the end of the day, it was always my choice. So they definitely liked the schools that I was going towards, Gettysburg and the College of New Jersey. My parents came with me, sat down with the coach as well, which is really important. And they too got to really get to know the schools and what it was going to be like. I mean, for my parents, of course, and I'm sure any other parents, academic is going to be a huge thing. So they weren't just considering, okay, is my daughter going to play? Like, what's the games like? It was, okay, let's take a good look at the business school. Are you going to get a good education?
Yeah, good. So now you go to school, you're at College in New Jersey. What's it like? What's it like to play lacrosse at a school like College in New Jersey? When do you get to school? What's the whole process of the whole year?
Yeah, so as a college athlete, no matter what division, you have to be very focused and you have to be very organized. You're not a typical college student that just goes to class, studies, and then that's it. You have this really extra job to do, and it's like a 4-hour extra job a day. So I really had to be very organized. Every week I knew where I was going, I knew what I had to do, and I had to make sure that I was fitting my study time in between those sessions. So it definitely requires a lot of hard work and a lot of organization, but you make it work.
So now, do you start school August, July? When does it start for a lacrosse player?
For a lacrosse season, it's during the spring, so you don't have to come into campus earlier, unlike the fall seasons where you're probably going to come in a few weeks before to start your preseason practices.
Okay.
So for us as lacrosse players, we usually got maybe like a workout packet to get us in shape for the summer, because really you're making sure that you're preparing yourself all year.
Yeah.
So although we didn't come in early, we had a workout packet where we would be working out all of the summer, right from when the season ends until we go back to school. And then I would go back to school in August, but then preseason would start maybe a few weeks later, and that's when we would work out with the team. And it was very early before all our classes, maybe 5:30 a.m. practices. And then once that preseason is over, you're back to your workout packets, working out on your own all winter, even during the break when no one's telling you what to do. You had to stay motivated.
So through the Christmas break, you're still working out.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So now, and then when do you go back to school in the spring?
And then we went back to school around, I believe, end of January, February, but then right then practice was starting.
Okay.
Preseason was starting, and we had double sessions and everything. So it's definitely a year-long commitment. There's no break. So
and how many games do you play during the regular season?
I believe it was about like 15, and then we went on to tournaments and national tournaments and then championship games. So it really could go on until about like end of May, beginning of June.
Wow. So it really is a consuming sport that goes all the way around the whole season.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, that's amazing. So now you're a business major. You start thinking about business, of course. When did this whole thing about opening up Interact With, what is that, and what do you do with that?
Yeah, so I actually was in a full-time career for about 9 years before I started this company. And so that really helped me gain all the experiences I needed to be able to build a company, build a product, really learn about sales. I also went to get my MBA during that time. So I got my MBA from Rutgers University. I concentrated in entrepreneurship. So I really made sure that before I took that leap, that I had all the basics and everything down to really know how to grow a business. And so this actually, I always wanted to build a brand new business, but I wasn't going to just think of an idea and then do it. So luckily, there was this problem that I realized right when I was in my last career, and what we saw was that there needed to be safer communication between high school coaches and their athletes. So right now, there's a lot of texting that goes on between coaches and athletes, but how do we safeguard that further? Not just to protect the athletes, but the coaches as well. And so luckily, this was like the perfect timing. I spoke to my high school athletic director who said, Amanda, there's this state policy requiring all school districts to create some kind of electronic communication policy for their schools. And it turned out that a lot of the schools really prohibited texting because they were like, you know what, we don't have transparency over it. We don't have administrators looking at evidence if it was required. So let's just prohibit it, which could be at a disadvantage because a lot of high school coaches need to communicate with athletes. And so that's when we came up with, okay, why don't we make something that's safer but meets that need that administrators want, which is that transparency and those risk management tools to be able to protect their whole student body and their employees.
So is it something where you're safeguarding the texts? Does it destroy them? How does it work?
Sure. So how it works is the school administrators, like the athletic director, says, okay, we would love to work with Interactwith. They get an administrator tool where they basically could decide and see the relationships and which coaches need this and which athletes need this. Once they set and decide who gets to use this, now the coaches and athletes basically get to communicate through our app, just like text messaging, but there's no phone numbers being shared. So that's the number one safeguarding. We're using school district email addresses, but no matter what, everything is stored and archived. So that's the second biggest part of our safeguarding, is that if anything ever happened, the administrators have full transparency over it and could provide the evidence to the parents, the board, or anybody else that needs it. So again, it really protects both coaches and the athletes at the same time.
So is everything being saved and watched over?
Yeah, and it's not, for big brotherly reasons, but everything is saved for that incident that if anything is ever questioned, they could provide that information.
Gotcha. And so are you seeing a lot of schools, not just high schools, are you seeing colleges doing it as well?
Our interest is really coming from high schools. And the college level, it's not really as big of a concern in terms of safeguarding because now everyone's over 18 and the coaches aren't dealing with minors. So definitely more on the high school level where adults are working with teenagers and texting with them. The other interests where we're also getting interest is from nonprofit youth organizations. Oh. So like those volunteer programs where there's volunteers mentoring teenagers or kids, and they have to be able to communicate with them maybe through texting to say, okay, let's go to a basketball game today, or let's work on your homework together. And that's where some program directors have been interested in learning more about what we do to safeguard texting.
And so how long have you been doing this?
So we have been close to a couple of years now. Serving schools and now youth programs.
Great. And if people want to get in touch with you, what's the email address?
Sure. So our website is interactwith.com. So INTRACTWITH, one word, and .com. And they could email support@interactwith.com.
Great, perfect. So now, just to get back into lacrosse, you were talking about tournaments. Is that big for high school kids to do these tournaments? And how far reaching does it have to be? Can it be close, or do they have to travel all over the country?
So in terms of the tournaments, I actually see tournaments starting at an early age, which is middle school. So that's when they're really getting their skills set and working with teams and working with elite coaches. So to be competitive in the game now, you actually there's a lot of athletes that are starting like at 6th grade going to these tournaments. You don't have to go too far because a lot of these tournaments, if you go and research it online, a lot of the college coaches will come to them. So even if you want to go to a team that's in the West Coast, they'll actually come to some of the East Coast tournaments. So, but definitely a huge thing if you're thinking of going the college route, tournaments is definitely a great way to be in front of coaches and show your game.
Yes, and people usually say tournaments usually try to go to the ones where you're interested in those type of schools that'll be there.
Exactly.
Is that something big?
Yeah, exactly. So at these tournaments, always they usually will give a list of all the coaches and schools that will be there. So even way in advance, just like I did, you would definitely tell the coaches, okay, I see you're gonna be there, I will be there as well, here's my schedule, and tell them about yourself, your stats, and why you're gonna be standing out and why you wanna go to that school, but definitely tell them ahead of time that you're going to be there.
Now, did you have to do videotapes? Did you send a lot of videotapes? How does that work?
So back when I was in high school, we were sending actual videotapes. So I was sending packages that were this big and bulky and huge. So nowadays it's very different. So you could either send CDs or even send them like a YouTube video, which is great. It's a lot faster to communicate to these coaches and send them in your information. So it's definitely different now.
And now, how do you break down the video? Did you have to do like an intro with a full game, or is it just a little bit of a game? Highlights? How does it work?
So you definitely want to be able to show how you stand out. So in the beginning, maybe put yourself in front of the video and make sure that you're clearly stating your name and what you do and your stats and a little bit about yourself. And the rest of the tape will showcase what you think they would want to see. So if you're playing attack, of course, your shooting skills, your passing skills, everything that they would want to see, your left cradling, your right hand, shooting left, shooting right, everything. Mm-hmm. Maybe your speed as well. So definitely parts of the game, but even my brother, who actually was recruited for baseball, also showed himself a practice where, okay, if I'm not able to get clips from games, I could at least show them me doing it by myself in a practice.
Great. Now, how about size? I mean, you really can't tell on TV your size, but does that come into effect in a sport like lacrosse, or can you be any shape to play lacrosse?
It actually depends. So as an attacker, I haven't come into any questions about, okay, how tall are you, and stuff like that. But definitely on the defensive side, maybe you'd want to be a little bit taller is a huge advantage because you're able to stand up a little bit taller. Same thing for the goalie, you're able to take up more space in the goal. But as a defender, being tall is definitely a good advantage because you're able to cover a girl more easily with your height and maybe your strength. An attacker, you want to look for speed, and you want to look at how well they move and how well they shoot. So that's more with strength rather than how tall you are.
Good. Now, do you see a difference in boys and girls? I mean, are there a lot more boys playing lacrosse, or are there a lot more girls playing lacrosse? Do you see any difference when you were in school compared to now?
Yeah, I think that all in all, the game of lacrosse has grown tremendously. So just as an example, when I played in high school, I had the only elite team that I could go to was in New York because there was none in New Jersey. So like I said, I had to travel about a little more than an hour to go to practice all the way in Sloatsburg, New York.
Wow.
Now you have a lot of options in New Jersey to play for many different elite teams. I think there's more than a handful now all over New Jersey, from North Jersey to South Jersey, which is amazing. So that's how big it's really, really grown.
Yeah, that's great. So now in college, what's the camaraderie with the team? Is there any special things that you get at college compared to just regular students going to school as academics, or is it a little bit different?
In terms of maybe getting special treatment or anything like that, I did not feel that at all. I felt like I actually had to work harder because I was a college athlete. So even, with professors, you would think, okay, cut me a little slack because I have a game tomorrow. No. You work around that. You have to talk to your teacher or professor and say, okay, I might miss, class, but what are you going to go over? I need to, prepare for that class way in advance. So there's definitely no special treatment for that. But so, yeah, you definitely have to stay organized and just make sure.
So now a lot of parents usually say, it's all about the sport, nothing about academics. What's your defense on that question?
Well, with that, it's what are you going to do after college? You always want to see what's my future goals. Once college is over, you might not play professional sports, so you really have to think about, okay, if I'm going to college, am I going to get that education that's going to get me to where I want to go in my career? So that's when you really have to focus on both, because it's not going to be, fun sports the rest of your life. You have to go into the, career mode after college.
Yeah, so for kids that are out there looking to go to play lacrosse at the college level, they should know that they have to focus on just studies and being organized. Yep. Is that it?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So when you were at school, how did you make time to do all of those study times that you needed?
I definitely organized myself like a day in advance, or a week in advance, knowing, okay, I have a game this Saturday. When are my free times to be able to study? So every day I had a calendar, very organized, and every hour I knew exactly what I was doing each hour. Even putting in time, lunchtime, 12 to 1, okay, and then I even had to put in my calendar, I had to go to the trainer, a couple hours in advance. I had to put that in my calendar. So everything was very timed and had to be very organized.
Wow, so you really broke it down to a lot.
Exactly.
Yeah, so what type of things at the college level were you looking at in the sport when you were looking at the schools? Is it just the sport, or was it, do I have to play as soon as I get there? Do I sit the bench? What are you looking at when you were choosing the school?
It was, in terms of the sports, I wanted to make sure that I was on a team that was competitive. I'm a very competitive person. I wanted to make sure that the team that I was on was committed and would challenge me as a player. So that was my number one thing. I didn't want to maybe go to a college that would be a little bit easier and, maybe be the top person. I wanted to make sure that I was on a team where there were team players much, much better than me that could motivate me and challenge me.
Great, good. So we're coming to the end of our show. And usually I ask my guests, what advice do you want to give to the parents out there that their sons or daughters are going to play lacrosse or want to play lacrosse at the college level? What advice do you want to give them to tell them,
Sure.
what happens?
Yeah, so, I have a couple of advice, maybe a little bit more, but definitely start off with academically, what do you want for your child or for your child to know, okay, what do I want to do in the future? So based on that, look at the colleges that are interested in you. Do they meet that criteria? Is it a match? So it has to be a match both for the school and you as well. And then that would be really one of my biggest advice. My second advice also in terms of being able to reach those colleges would be very creative now with how you reach those colleges. So back in my day, there was no such thing as social media, but you have all these unique resources now and channels to be able to stand out to these coaches and reach them as well. So even the use of social media, maybe put your videos out there, tag the actual college. A lot of the college lacrosse teams will have their own Instagram, will have their Facebook or Twitter. So how do you maybe reach out to them in that way and show your video? Of course, making sure that you're very responsible on social media, not putting things that would not make you look very good. So that's one way to uniquely reach out to them. And then the other way would be definitely these tournaments. They're a huge thing to be able to stand out and be in front of them. So all these different tools to definitely try to reach them in a very unique way.
Great. Well, thank you very much for coming. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So you've been watching The Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uva. Until next time.